and we are continuing in the topic that he spoke, that by Yom Hashmini, it was the eighth day. The eighth day has to do with he brought a whole kliyakar, has to do with higher than Seder Ishtalshlos, but the kliyakar says connects it with Yemois HaMashiach. That's the Kinnur Shal Mashiach is 8 strands versus the Notla Asara Esra Torres. The 10 crowns has to do with the idea that it's higher than that even. It's an even beyond number 8. It says the Kinnur Shal Olam Haba, the world to come, is 10 strands, and we said that there is the 2 levels. There's the level of one level of Niflois, that we also spoke about in a previous mimer, that that Mitzrayim and the splitting of the sea brings about the Niflois of Mashiach's times, both the Geula with Mashiach and the Banar Yavru Barogel, that they will cross by foot. The river is a result of the crossing that took place by Kriyas Yamsuf. And another thing we said, that there's the Niflois. Niflois is Lashon Rabim, 2 wonders. The 2 wonders are referring both to Yemois HaMashiach and to Olam Haba. And we're saying that both Yitzias Mitzrayim and our avodah throughout the time of Golus is to lead to these 2 things of Yemois HaMashiach and Olam Haba. And we said that Yemois HaMashiach is more directly connected with our avodah. When we say that our avodah of Berurim is something that brings about Yemois HaMashiach, it's because the days of Mashiach has to do with things that have to do with Avon of Asogya, has to do with our understanding, has to do with something that is still some type of level of limitation, and therefore there are different types of levels in that type of revelation of Mashiach's times. There's Yelchu Mechail Choil we spoke about, but when we talk about the time of La'asid Lavai, beyond the times of Mashiach, the level of Olam Haba, that is beyond our open avoid of Golus, our avoid Sabirurim, and that's why it's something that is beyond even the level of Aliyas, or something that's Nitfas and Avon of Asaga. And on that we say that it's Yom Shekul Shabbos U'Menucha L'Chayei Olamim. It's not even a level of rising up higher and higher. It's a level of Sham Nismecha Boy, that we are just rejoicing in Hashem's very essence. Now he's going to bring it back to what we spoke about at the beginning of the Maimer, that on the 8th day, Rashi says, we took 10. That the 8 and the 10 are the 2 levels of Yemois HaMashiach and Olam Haba. So we're holding on the 5th page of the copies, page Yutes, 2nd paragraph, line 23. This is also the idea that the 3 matters of the 8th day of the Miluim, because it was the 8th day after the 7 days of training that took place, Esra Torres, and the 10 crowns that Rashi said that we took on that 8th day. The number 8 and the number 10 indicate these 2 levels of the days of Mashiach and Olam Haba. And that's also HaTorres, it's a level of crowns. Crowns shows on Keser, higher than Seder Ishtalshlos. The advantage and quality of the number 8 is Sheshoimer as Shivas Yemei Hakef. It encompasses the cycle of 7 days. What's the cycle of 7 days? The Shivas Yemei Hakef Koi Al Sheva Hamidus, top of page Chof. The 7 day cycle goes on the 7 attributes, the 7 emotions, Chesed through Malchus. And 8th, when counting from bottom up, it's going on Bina, that's beyond the levels of the emotions. In the 7 days of the cycle, is included also the level of delight, which when we talk about delight, that's a very high level. How is it including the level of delight? That's also understood that the day of Shabbos, which is delight, like it says, So he says right after the brackets, Nichel b'shivas yemei if it's considered part of the 7-day cycle. So see, in the 7-day cycle, not even number 8, but even in the 7-day cycle is included the level of the light. What specifically is connected with the light in the 7 days of the cycle? So he says in the brackets, line 4, the 7th day of the week, that's the level of Malchus. The Rebbe Rashab explains in a Maimer that the light of Hashem is not in the revelations that take place in Atzilus, but it's in the level of Malchus, where over there it brings the oil down into the worlds of Bri, Yetzirah, Asiyah. So that's where Hashem's delight is. So we see that the light is Nichel b'shivas yemei if it's included in the 7 days of the cycle. And we see the idea of Shabbos having to do with the light. Shabbos bos menucha. When Shabbos arrives, the rest arrives. That's also associated with the light. V'atainug the Shabbos. Not only is it just reserved for Shabbos, but that the light of Shabbos, shekol malach kasuya, that your entire work is already done. Poil b'chol shivas hayom, but it influences and affects all the 7 days. What does that mean? From the day of Shabbos, all the days receive their brachas, their blessings. Since the delight of Shabbos is included in the 7-day cycle, so therefore it's not the pure essential level of delight. It's only the delight the way it is in Midas. That's the advantage and quality of the 8th day. The level of Bina, like we said before, it's number 8 on top of the Midas. The delight and pleasure of Bina is beyond the delight and pleasure of the emotions. And the delight of Bina, just like we said before, the delight of Shabbos influences all the rest of the days, that the light of one day influences all the rest of the midas, the same thing. The delight and pleasure of Bina influences an ascent also in the emotions. If that's the idea that the 8th guards and encompasses and takes in the entire cycle. It's the whole cycle, so it's even more than the way the Tainug of Shabbos influences the rest of the days of the week. That means that the light of Bina also affects an ascent in the emotions, that they are the days of the cycle of the week. From the very fact that the 8th day, that is the one that encompasses the cycle, moving it's understood, the very fact that it encompasses something, that means even though it's beyond it, it's associated with it. Similar to what we always say about Sfiras HaOmer. I'm sorry, not Sfiras HaOmer, I meant to say Soiviv Kol Almin. On the one hand, it's Soiviv, but the fact that we call it Soiviv Kol Almin, it still relates to the world. A similar vein we find concerning Sfiras HaOmer. It's about the drawing down of the intellect to the emotions, the same way as the relationship of Bina to the Midas, that it's a Shomer HaHekev. Because it relates to the Midas, therefore it's considered something that encompasses them and guards them, protects them, etc. How come? Why is that so? How can Bina do that? Because even Bina, though it's beyond the emotions, how they call in the entire idea of Bina is that it grasps, it comprehends. In a state of comprehension, it's something that one can take in, meaning there's a certain form and limitation to it. Concerning this, also understood concerning the delight that's in Bina. Shuinin is Galus, Atik Shuvabin, that's the revelation of Atik Yom in the level of Bina. Top of page Chaf Aleph. The delight of Bina is also in a state of something that can be grasped. Because this delight is in a state that is being enclosed in bina. The entire idea of how Atik comes down into bina. Atik is seemingly beyond Seder Ishtalshlus, but bina has this idea of broadness. The whole idea of bina is to take the point of the Chachma and develop it and broaden it. And therefore, first of all, when Tainu comes into bina, it becomes graspable. And the bina is a vessel and a vehicle for the Tainug because it's so broad and so wide. So he says in line 4, since the level of bina and the revelation of Atik that's in bina are in a category in a way of being grasped, therefore there's an association with the level of the emotions. That's why bina is called the world of freedom. What's the idea of the world of freedom? Why is bina called the world of freedom? And this also has to do with the idea that bina has 50 gates, the 50 levels, and the 50th year is the time when the servants go out free. You can only use the term freedom if there's a possibility for servitude. Only then the idea of freedom applies. So therefore, midas, which are to a certain degree more limited, so bina, that is the freedom, indicates that it has to do with the limitation of the midas. Now he again goes back to the 10 crowns versus the 8th day. Based on the fact what bina is, the number 8, we can understand how the 10 crowns is even greater than the number 8. Shmini, the level of the 8th, and the 8th is not just bina alone, but also gam kifisha koil kolashol shoshoinus. Earlier in the Maimer, I believe it was earlier in this Maimer, maybe it was the previous Maimer, that the 8th, the bina, includes in it all the 3 first midas of Chochmah Bina Das. That's already the level of the light that came down, and it's enclosed, and it's associated with the emotions. Like we mentioned before, that's the translation of the light when it comes down, revealed into Bina. As opposed to the idea of the 10 crowns is the revelation of the delight that's beyond becoming enclosed. That's why it's called 10 crowns. Because what's revealed in them is also the level of the crown the makif, the keser, shalomailod mishtal mislapshus. That's the makif of keser. That's a transcendent level of keser that doesn't even come down. It doesn't have any association with becoming enclosed and coming down here into the worlds, and definitely not into the limitations of the midas. So now we're going to go back to what we said before, all the way to the Kli Yakar that says this, that the eighth strands has to do with Mashiach's harp, and the 10 strands has to do with Olam Haba, past Mashiach's times. But Yemois Mashiach has to do with our avoida. It still has to do with Tfisa, the Rebbe said. So he says in line 17, Vezel Masha Shneiha and Yonam the Shmini Vesra Toras. That's why both concepts of the 8 and the 10 crowns are similar and corresponds to the days of Mashiach versus the higher level of the world to come. The idea of the 8 that has to do with Bina and the revelation of the light in it. That Bina, the light in it, has to do with the emotions, with the midas. It's similar to the revelations of the days of Mashiach that's associated and has a connection with the service of refining the sparks. In the idea of the 10 crowns, that's talking about the essence of the light, the way it's in Keser, beyond the worlds. It's similar to the revelation of the world to come. Then will become revealed the essential delight that's beyond even our avoid of refining the sparks, not as a direct result from our avoid of refining the sparks, is where we get and how we get the revelation of Olam Haba. So now the Rebbe adds, despite that being so high, he says in line 25, Mikol Mokim, still in all, Nemar Notal Eser Ataris. It says he took 10 crowns. V'loi Muchter be'Eser Ataris. It doesn't say he is coronated with 10 crowns. Kidei Lahoiris, to indicate Shagilui de'Eser Ataris b'yom hashmini. Huloi ba'ifin shayini d'shmini mizbatlon tziu. So it's not in such a way that the 10 crowns that were taken on the 8th day. So it means, okay, you have now the level of Tainug itself, the level of Keser, beyond Seder Ishtalshus, so Shmini ceases to be. It stops being number 8, it becomes totally subsumed in the level of the Tainug itself. No, it's not that way. It's not Tal Eser HaTorah. It took it. The 8th day was able to take it in and receive it. Rather, the way it remains in its existence. The 8th is there. Top of page Chav Beis. He also takes the 10 crowns. The 10 crowns that are totally beyond any type of avoida and tfisa and limitation, etc., is now taken in an internalized fashion. It's brought down internally. So he says in Oisheim, according to what we explained before, the great quality and advantage of the world to come, that's higher even than the days of Mashiach. So therefore, going back, we have to go to what we were talking about earlier in the Maimer, and also the previous Maimer says that it's all coming, as I mentioned earlier, out of and the result of the preface of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Yetzias Mitzrayim and Kriyas Yamsuf brings about, as the beginning, is the source for the Geula Asidah. And the splitting of the sea is a source for the crossing of the river by foot. And Yetzias Mitzrayim is not just the source for Yemais Mashiach, but Niflois Lashon Rabim. So he said, we need to understand line 5. What is the advantage and quality of going out of Mitzrayim specifically? Because of going out of Mitzrayim has such a great quality that we're trying to understand. Yetzias Mitzrayim is the cause. So who says it must have a great quality? So there's a rule. The cause must be stronger than the consequence and the effect. He says in the brackets, like it's known concerning the cause and effect. In the cause, there's something stronger than the effect. So how can it be? What is it about Yetzias Mitzrayim? That's a cause. Not just the revelation of the days of Mashiach, also to the revelation of the world to come. The Rebbe says in line 11, this will be understood according to what was explained previously. In the Kriyas Yamsuf, and the idea of the splitting of the sea, in the previous Maimon, the Rebbe said this, that's when it was the completion of going out of Mitzrayim. When were they totally free? When the Egyptians drowned in the sea. And that splitting of the sea, more so even than going out of Mitzrayim, was a preparation for Matan Torah. Let's explain the Torah. So the Rebbe is going to explain what is it about the splitting of the sea. That's a preparation for the giving of the Torah. The idea behind this is the Matan Torah, the novelty, uniqueness of the giving of the Torah over the Torah that was studied beforehand and fulfilled by the others. As we know then, the decree that separated the spiritual and the physical ceased. And then was accomplished that the ones above should descend down below, and those below should ascend above the Chiddush Zesh of Matan Torah. And this accomplishment of Matan Torah, that the above can come below and the below can rise above, Hoyai de Agdama de Kriyas Yamsuf was through the prefacing of the splitting of the sea, because the splitting of the sea was also about removing divisions and separations. It's the idea of the splitting of the separation, the curtain that's between the sea and dry land, which often goes between the world of Atzilus and the world of Bia, between Alma Discasia, which we say the sea has to do with the concealed worlds and the dry land has to do with the revealed worlds. And instead of them being separated and removed one from another, the Yami Basha becomes the joining of both entities of sea and dry land. And there were in two types of ways, in the two opinions of how it was done. According to the Zohar, it was the idea of the splitting of the sea was drawing down Atzilus into the worlds of Bia, meaning that the sea became dry land. Atzilus, which is the sea, became into Bia, dry land. Or the opinion of the Arizal, Valos, Bri, Yisira, Vasiya, Batzilus. The elevation and ascent of Bia to the world of Atzilus, that's Yabosha. Bia is the level of Yabosha, and Nasiyam became the sea. And the Rebbe says they're both true. Just like El Yoinim Yedel Tachtoinim, Tachtoinim Yal El Yoinim, like we'll soon say. This was not just in the sea and the dry land the way they're in Atzilus, but rather in all matters of sea and dry land, the way they are in the most highest levels. Like the expression of the Mechilta top of page Chav Gimel. That all the waters in the world split, which spiritually means all divisions, all separations in every world going up to the highest, most levels had to be split and removed. And this was a preparation for Matan Torah. This was a preparation for the nullification of the decree and the divider of the aboves and the ones above and the ones below by giving of the Torah. Then there was also the joining of both directions. That the ones below could rise up to the ones above. Those above will descend below. More specifically, we could explain that the explanation that the ones below go up to the ones above means that the below will become elevated. They will become more sanctified. They will become akin to the levels of the ones above. So too, it's when we talk about the ones above going down below. It's not just they're descending down here, but they remain aloof. They remain removed. No. It's the ones above are in a state of the ones below. Meaning, it's not that they become lessened, but rather now their place is down here below. That's the idea of a home down here below. The idea of a home is that the beauty of a person is to be settled in a home. So the Yoinim now feel comfortable down here. They descend and they become part of the below. When it says the beauty of man is to be settled in a home, is referring also to supernal man, meaning Adam of Atzilus and Adam Kadman, V'gam L'mayla Yos, or even higher. As we know, the home for the Eibishadani below is also Hashem's essence. Since this dira is down here below, therefore, Nimtza comes out that the place of those above now are here below. That's their home. That's where they belong. So he goes on line 18. Though by the giving of the Torah, that was after the introduction. and the prefacing of going on Mitzrayim and splitting the sea. What was revealed at Matan Torah was only the revealed part of the Torah. And the revelation of the inner part of the Torah will be only revealed in the future in the teachings of Mashiach. After prefacing going out from this final goal that will be completed, that they will cross the sea by foot. They will cross the river by foot, just like crossing the sea was a preface to the giving of the Torah. How do you do it? But yet it's known, the giving of the Torah will not be again. Giving Matan Torah nitten hakoil, because in the giving of the Torah everything was given. Gam Torah Mashiach, even the Torah Mashiach. Val derech zibin negel the Kriyas Yamsuf in a similar vein concerning the splitting of the sea. Shebe'inyan hafach yam li'abba shachon l'Matan Torah, concerning the sea being transformed to dry land, which is the preparation for Matan Torah. Yesh gam ha'inyan the menor the agre berogel. There's also the idea that they will cross the river by foot. Hachanol the Torah Mashiach tapav chavdal, the preparation for the teachings of Mashiach. So that already began in the splitting of the sea. Until all the revelations of the future will come down through our actions and our service through Torah mitzvahs that were given by Matan Torah. The vast majority of mitzvahs are enclosed in physical items. Tzitzis betzamer gashmi, tzitzis in physical wool, with tefillin meklav gashmi, and tefillin in physical with physical parchment. Also mitzvahs having to do with the duties of the heart that seemingly are not spiritual. They still have to be felt in the physical heart of flesh, just like literally you can hook him up to a heart monitor and see his excitement and his fear and his love. The kibbutz is till you'll actually see a difference in the constriction and expansion of the heart. Also the mitzvahs that are obligatory on the brain in the knowledge of godliness. It affects a change in the physical brain. So the shenasas by hagdol of gamim nakmotim, it also becomes the growth of the physical brain, and the more grooves are created in the brain through it. So we see the physical brain is affected. Okay, I guess we'll stop over here. We'll have to finish tomorrow.